Welcome back to another episode of the fill in the blank word conversations. This is a series that I started, I think it's been 4 to 5, maybe even 6 weeks ago, where I really wanted to create the space where we can raise consciousness or awareness around certain topics and certain words that matter most to us. And today's guest, his name is Garry Turner, that I wanted to have on this particular platform. Him and I connected. How long has it been, Garry? Half a year?
Yeah,
Closer
maybe
to
longer. I'm
closer
not
to that,
sure.
maybe even longer. But I'll still remember that initial conversation that you and I connected around, and one thing led to another, and you were on our other podcast, and then I was on yours, and we've kept in touch since. So I've been very fortunate to have people like you within my network and be able to share these spaces and opportunities to provide our insights and what it means to go through this journey we all call life, and even try and ponder upon that question, what is life to begin with? But that's a topic for a different conversation and a different time. And so I really wanted to have you on the show. And before we start, I want to give the listeners a perspective and an understanding of who you are. And I'm going to ask you that question of who are you and how would you answer that particular thing?
Yeah, it's funny enough. It's even changed since we first met several months ago, which is quite interesting. So there's a different level of clarity, Oleg, for me. So I've done quite a bit of clearing up, shall we say, of my mind around who am I, what do I want to be, how do I want to serve, and with the support. And I have to give a shout out to Nilofer Merchant, who's an ex-Apple executive who wrote a wonderful book called Onlyness.
Mm-hmm.
And she's helped me clarify, Oleg, my onlyness. And that's been something that's been in its emergence for a couple of years. But as of December last year, to answer your original question, I am an interpersonal catalyst.
Mm.
And what that means is I'm here to help catalyze human connection for the betterment of all. Like, that is my life's work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've never been clearer, never been so laser clear on why I'm here and how I'm here to serve. And the beautiful thing for me is that within that statement I just gave you, there's two key things. So my core values are growth and connection. Like, they're my absolute non-negotiables, and I directly linked to that message I just gave you. So, like, the interpersonal catalyst is why I'm here.
Well, one of the things that I'm very fortunate on is to be on this journey with you. And as, like you said, when you and I met, you might have had a different understanding and a different vision. But I think that's the coolest part to recognize within all is that it's okay to evolve, right? It's okay to change. It's okay to adapt to the different changes that we become. And that's the biggest thing that I try and pass on whenever people ask me, hey, you said this a year ago and now you're saying this, or you did this. And I said, well, that's because I did what I knew with what I had. And so now I have access to different resources, different perspectives, more importantly, and it allows me to grow. One of the things that I really admire about you that stood out to me from the first conversation we had, we were talking about LinkedIn, and the topic was that it was the likes versus comments and the whole storytelling side of it. And what you said was that I really enjoy seeing posts that get more comments than they get likes. And what's been really interesting throughout my own journey of kind of committing to this process and choosing to share my own perspectives is that all of this is just an opportunity to start a conversation, right? This is just a dialogue. This is this is a space we can invite other people in and saying, hey, this is what we're choosing to talk about, but what do you think? How does that word apply to you? How does that concept appear in your life? And so I'm curious to know right now, in the person that you are today, what is a word that is not necessarily most important, but is the most evident within your life right now?
Yeah, I'm going to pick the second of those two words, how I introduce myself, so catalyst.
Mm-hmm. And why did you pick that?
So it's actually multifaceted. So, one, because I'm clear. So my gifts, and again, I think you do such a good job with your different platforms, Oleg, in helping people see in that mirror. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I've got, like, if we look at our human experience, conscious, like, as a mirror, like, for most of our life, we've had it. It's very mucky. We can't see into it. We can't see what's reflecting back at us because we just haven't had the emotional maturity or the understanding or the support, or in the wrong
Mm-hmm.
crowd or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel I'm at a stage at the moment where that I'm so clear in that mirror that's reflecting back at me. It's all about being this catalyst. And why that matters to me so much is that I didn't realize that that was a superpower of mine, is actually in an in-person scenario, my ability to catalyze human connection, i.e. ignite people, bring them together, let them become the best versions of themselves in community. Like, it's just something that I thought was everybody did, but it's only when other people hold the mirror up and go, actually, it's not that obvious for everybody. Then you
Mm-hmm.
go, oh, well, okay, well, maybe I need to try and serve more through that lens.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really that. So I think it's that, and part of this, of course, has been how you and I met as well, with Humans First. So the more I've been meeting great people through the Humans First movement with Mike Vacanti and others, the more I've been leading workshops within my own workplace and also outside of that, everything comes back, Oleg, to me being in a room with human beings. It can be virtual, but mainly in person. Being in person with a group of human beings and helping them catalyze growth, knowledge, and experience in community. And what that looks like, it might sound a bit wishy-washy. Within 6 hours,
Mm-hmm.
I've taken a team of 29 people recently through a 6-hour exercise, and they hacked 502 data points and co-created 40 ideas, 40, in less than 6 hours. And that was just a team of human beings that don't normally talk to each other. They don't normally see each other for weeks on end. Like, it's just this. I'm just so passionate about getting people to slow down, come together on a human level, and just see each other as equals. Because the exponential potential that sits within us is, yeah, we've got no idea what that even is yet. And I just see it in my small little example. When
Mm-hmm.
people just give themselves permission to slow down and connect as a human, like, there's just so much more within us, so much more.
There's something that I want to dive into, and that is this topic that you brought up halfway through that conversation or that story, and that is wiping off the mirror and then understanding that, hey, this is not as obvious to some people. And I'm curious to know, with that understanding and realization, how does your concept of common sense change?
What a fantastic question. Common sense. Well, we sort of chatted before we came on. What is common sense? Is an intuitive, in the moment reaction based on your experience at that time. There
Mm-hmm.
is common is only common in the moment. Like, what I just said has gone. Like, that's past. It's history. So, like, the only thing we can do is make decisions right now based on the people that are around us, what the stories we're telling ourselves in our mind, the conversation we're having. Like, common sense is, for me, it's an intuitive, in the moment reaction to the things we're thinking.
Mm-hmm. The reason why I've been curious about that is because I, for a while, has been telling myself that there's nothing common about it. The common sense is that it's just you're in the moment, knowing what you know, and doing the best that you can. But
Yeah.
it's the practice. I think that's not common, right? It's the practice of creating spaces where you can recognize other people, see their talents, cultivate these groups and these friendships, and then be the catalyst for that change and that transformation and that work moving forward. But I just thought it was a very interesting point to bring up, because for the longest time, I myself thought that, hey, I'm doing this, and to me, this is every day. This is my life. And then I used to ask myself, well, why is it that other people don't see it the same way? Respecting people or being nice, why is that in some circumstances, why is that a second language or a foreign language? Why is that not the native tongue?
Well, I think that this comes to me. So we've got the catalyzing on one part, and I think for me, part of that, to come back to that word, is there's a belief. Yeah, I believe, you believe, many of us do,
Mm-hmm.
but those that you might say, inverted commas, don't practice common sense, it's because they're stuck inside their head, Oleg. They're chasing a vision of something that is insular. It's about them. It's about, whatever story or relationship or education system been brought up in. and they're not allowing themselves to be free of that thinking. And that is a practice. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to allow yourself to wander, to go for a walk, to read a book or whatever. Like, where does our insight and realization come from? It's never ever when we're up against the grind, under pressure, stressed out, high heaven. Like, no ideas come at that point. They always come when the mind is wandering and it's free to just wander around. And I think this is something that a lot of us, and I've only woken up to this, as you know, the last sort of couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Society en masse is stuck inside its head in a massive overthinking frenzy of the next car, that person's out to get me. Oh my God, if I don't do this, I'm not going to get that. Like, it's just madness. Like, we are destroying ourselves from the inside out. And like, if we could just realize that we are all innately connected and we are all ready to catalyze one another's brilliance. Like, I know it sounds really utopian, but like, it is that simple. If everybody right now for 1 minute drop whatever they're thinking to the ground and just went, tell you what, the virus would disappear, like world war would disappear, like greed would disappear, like, because everyone would feel all of a sudden this connected oneness that we all come from. Like, everyone's just so busy trying to be like number one or own this or own that, instead of just realizing that we're quite good enough before the materialism kicks in.
Mm-hmm. It's all a matter of perspective. And I think the cool thing about it is that you have a choice in when it comes to that perspective. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you with everything that you mentioned, and that if we were to just simply let it be, I mean, it's just the same exact concept of channeling your energy elsewhere, right? Choosing to consciously make a choice and saying, hey, instead of me putting all of the energy into this particular space, I'm going to put this energy into elevating other people. And the whole concept of elevating and empowering other people is, it doesn't have to be as quote unquote as complex as we make it to be. If the person is looking for a job, the way for you, in my opinion, to elevate him or her is not to get the job for them. That's not that would be great as an end result, but you can do as simple as encouraging them. Hey, keep going. Hey, how's your day going? What's going on? What type of progress have you made? How can I help? Who can I connect you to? What opportunities can we collectively create for you? Not for each other, but for you. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that we can always be a contribution to someone else's life, because there's no choice that is too small to have an impact.
I'm literally buzzing as I hear you talk. Really, Oleg, it's beautiful, because literally before we started, like 5 minutes before we jumped on this conversation, like, let me reframe it. Less than 60 minutes ago, I had a LinkedIn request from someone I don't know who they are. They've left a LinkedIn exchange 30 minutes later with connections to Human First, with 5 recommendations who to talk to, 4 of my podcasts, links. Like, I've just literally just said, look, you're interested in inclusion or diversity? Have a look at this, this, and this. Here's some people. Like, it costs me 0, absolutely 0. But that person's gone away totally like amazed that they can connect 30 minutes before, and then just suddenly have all of this sort of like content and idea gone back in their direction with no exchange of money, no desire for anything apart from helping each other out. Like, and we're going to meet up in London now at the end of April. Like, I didn't know the guy an hour ago, Oleg.
That's
I didn't
amazing.
know who he was. It's like, that's an example for me of like the whole catalyst thing. Is like, when we come from a place of abundance, and I really mean that, like, we can catalyze from abundance. We can't from scarcity. Like, if we believe there's not enough, like, it's like trying to light it's trying to start a fire without any sort of kindling or matches. Like, you're just going to keep hitting those 2 stones like it's like 2000 BC. Like, and I think that's a big shift. Like, and it speaks, I think, to your message around channeling energy. Is like, there is enough. Like, there is so much abundance out there, and you're speaking to it beautifully. Like, it is energy. Like, we've got to realize, and there's a lot of people speak at the moment as well, and I find this fascinating. People still talk a lot about time management, but I'm hearing more and more, and I experience this. It's not time management, it's energy management. Like, it's
Yes.
not about time, because time's elastic anyway. It's actually in the moment, what do you do with your energy?
Yeah. Because everything happens from that connection. Everything happens from that frequency and the energy that you bring. So you're spot on. The time doesn't matter because your life can change in a minute, in a second. And that's all has to do with how you show up or how you choose to show up. And I think that's a really interesting part when it comes to it all, is that I believe we have a choice in showing up, in making a decision to show up. And I think the one thing that I've noticed you create and do a great job at is creating a space where people can be a contribution from wherever they are. I mean, just literally showing up and listening. That's also a form of contribution. Observing, learning, sharing your insights. And so I think that's a really important thing to note within all of this, is that contribution can be so different depending on who you ask and depending on what their experience and perspectives have been.
That's really beautiful what you spoke to. And what's coming up for me, Oleg, actually is, and it's really brilliant what you said, is that the silence can be catalytic. Like creating the space for somebody else to think through without interruption. And my good friend Jane Atte Grant is amazing at this. She does a lot with the thinking environment from Nancy Klein, and I trained with her in that actually. And it's just this generative listening where you just hold space for someone else. So actually, you don't have to say or do anything apart from what you're doing right now brilliantly with me, and just being there for me as I talk or I think through what's going on in my mind. Like, you are giving me the gift of your presence. That is catalytic.
Mm-hmm. And I think oftentimes what's even interesting about this particular conversation and what you just pointed out is that, and trust me, that I'm also a human being, so that sometimes I have to catch myself when I come to those points. But sometimes I feel like I have to fill in that time and space with something. It's like I have to say something because otherwise it is quote unquote awkward silence. But really, it's not that at all. It's that space. It's the respect you're giving to the individual to reflect. And from there, you brought up a really interesting point. And that is when we think about innovation or what it means to be a catalyst or any of these opportunities to move forward with a vision that might be slightly different from the one that you've been following, an improved or enhanced vision, comes from silence. Because silence is reflection. I can't reflect when I'm talking because it's going. But when you stop yourself and you say, hey, what did I just say? Or how is that impacting this conversation? Is it helping us think any differently? Then that's when that's the power within.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's a really fascinating point to note and understand. And with that said, I'd like to ask you one final thought for this particular episode. And that is, how can you or how have you been a contribution to someone else's life today?
Well, I think that example I just gave is definitely one where I've met
Mm-hmm.
that guy literally an hour ago, and have given him a lot of content, and we're going to meet up. So I think that's one. The other one, I met one of my friends today, um, Janelle White, earlier today. We had a bite of lunch. We only met once before, over a year ago, and we just had a wonderful exchange of ideas and experiences in the 12 months since we last met. And I gained so much from hearing her experience and the journey she's been and
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. So I'd like to believe that, and it's one of my, on my tombstone, one of the things I would like to be remembered for is people leaving an interaction with me feeling more enriched and nourished than when they first came into an interaction with me. And I'm hoping, and I believe that's how Janelle felt today. She certainly had that experience with me.
Mm. Garry, how can people connect with you and your work?
Yeah, so the best way is actually, you can find my email at Garry, Garry Turner 0 at hotmail.com. Find me on Twitter at Garry IP Catalyst. and on LinkedIn you'll find me at Garry Turner International. No, Garry Turner, interpersonal catalyst. But basically, there's not too many people calling themselves that. And I'd like just to add as well, there is some value in that. I'm not just trying to be some superhero. It does actually make a difference.
Love that. I love the journey that you're on, and I always appreciate the perspectives that you share, because I certainly gain value from them, and it helps me think differently and expand and become a catalyst within my own space with your particular insights. So I appreciate you for sharing and for being who you are.
Well, thank you so much, Oleg, as well. And I'll look forward to hearing this back because you really asked some wonderful questions. So I know there's growth for me once I listen back. So thank you.